Krishna, Hare Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. So we are going to continue reading from Srimad Bhagavatam. We are on Canto 4, chapter 28, text 63. Yatha Purusha Atmanam.
Yatha Purusha Atmanam.
Ekam Adarsha Chakshusho.
Ekam Adarsha Chakshusho.
Vidha Bhutam Aviksheta.
Gita-Bhutam Aviksheta.
Tathaivantaram Avyayo.
Tathaivantaram Avyayo.
Translation and purport by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada. As a person sees the reflection of his body in a mirror to be one with himself and not different, whereas others actually see two bodies. So in a material condition, in which the living being is affected and yet not affected, there is a difference between God and the living entity. So the Brahmana, who is actually the Paramatma, he's been speaking to Vaidarvi and giving her transcendental knowledge. Being affected by the conditioning of matter, Mayavadi philosophers cannot see the difference between the Supreme Lord and living entity. Like for example, some of the yogis, when they are sitting in meditation and they're able to see the Paramatma in the heart, then they mistaken themselves to be the Paramatma. Some yogis make that error, thinking that the super soul is themselves. So some class of transcendentalists also, some class of philosophers also mistaken that God and the living entity is the same. But there is a difference. The sameness, the quality is the same, but the quantity is completely different. When the sun is reflected in a pot of water, the sun knows that there is no difference between himself and the reflected sun in the water. Those in ignorance, however, perceive that there are many small suns reflected in each and every pot. As far as the brilliance is concerned, there is brilliance both in the original sun and in the reflections. But the reflections are small, whereas the original sun is very large. So Prabhupada is giving this example of the sun is there in the sky, and then if we keep many, many pots of water, there will be the reflection of the sun in the water. The original sun is very big, but the reflections are small. Sorry. Vaishnava philosophers conclude that the living entity is simply a small sample of the original Supreme Personality of Godhead. Qualitatively, God and the living entities are one, but quantitatively, the living entities are small fragments of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So this is our relationship with God. Simultaneously one and different. Simultaneously one because same in quality, and different because the size is different. We are small fragments of God, whereas God is unlimited. So as Prabhupada is saying, we are simply a small sample of the original Supreme Personality of God. A tiny, like a tiny spark of fire is not equal to the whole fire. Tiny drop of water is not equal to the whole ocean water. Then again, one may say, oh, but then when the drop of water is put in the ocean, it becomes one. There's no difference. But we have to understand that we are not matter. Ocean water is still matter. We are spirit souls. The spirit soul can never lose its identity, its individuality. We are eternal. The Supreme Lord is full, powerful, and opulent. In the previous verse, the Lord says, my dear friend, you and I are not different. This not different refers to qualitative oneness, for it was not necessary for the Paramatma, the Supreme Personality, to remind the conditioned soul that he is not one in quantity. The self-realized soul never thinks that he and the Supreme Personality of Godhead are one in every respect. So one who's actually self-realized, the liberated soul, he can understand that he's not God. He understands that he is Brahman, but there is Para Brahman. Because he's come to the platform of Brahman. So he can see the truth that he is Brahman, but there is a Para Brahman. A God is there. Although he and the Supreme Personality of Godhead are one in quality, the living entity is prone to forget his spiritual identity, whereas the Supreme Personality never forgets. This is the difference between lipta and alipta. The Supreme Personality of Godhead is eternally alipta, uncontaminated by the external energy. The conditioned soul, however, being in contact with material nature, forgets his real identity. Therefore, when he sees himself in the conditioned state, he identifies himself with the body. So, right now, we are inside this body, but we are thinking we are the body. We are not able to understand we are the soul. Similarly, the Paramatma is sitting inside the body also, but he knows he is Paramatma. He does not identify with the body. So God never forgets his position, infallible, never touched by Maya. But we get covered by Maya. We start thinking I'm the body. We forget that we are spirit souls. But Paramatma never forgets he's the Paramatma. So there's a difference between God and us. For the Supreme Personality of Godhead, however, there's no difference between the body and the soul. He's completely soul. He has no material body. Although the super soul Paramatma and the individual soul are both within the body, the super soul is devoid of designation, whereas the conditioned soul is designated by his particular type of body. So when we are inside the body, we think I'm a man or a woman, I'm a human being or a dog or a cat or, so many designations. But Paramatma is also in the heart, but he does not identify himself as all these designations. He knows his position, that he is the Supreme Spirit. He never forgets his position. We forget. That's why we are thinking we are the body. Paramatma is also inside the body, but he never thinks he's the body. Is that okay?
Yes.
So the super soul is called Antaryami and he's extensive. This is confirmed in Bhagavad Gita 13.3. Kshetragyam chapi mam vidhi sarva kshetreshu bharata. O sign of Bharat, you should understand that I'm also the knower in all bodies. So in the 13th chapter, where Krishna is speaking about knowledge, what is knowledge, what is the kshetra, the body, the field of activities, what is the kshetragya, the soul. And then Krishna says that there are two knowers of the body. One is the soul, one is the super soul. So the soul is the knower of its own individual body, but is not the knower of the other bodies. We cannot know what's happening in each other's bodies. We cannot think the same. We cannot feel the same. We can't because we are just inside our own body. So we don't know what's happening in another's body. But Paramatma, he is there in everyone's body. He's the knower in all bodies. But he never identifies himself as the body. He never, he knows he's Paramatma. The super soul is present in everyone's body, whereas the individual soul is conditioned in one particular type of body. The individual soul cannot understand what is taking place in another's body, but the super soul knows very well what is happening in all bodies. In other words, the super soul is always present in his full spiritual position, whereas the individual soul is prone to forget himself. So that is our position. We forget. The Paramatma never forgets. And that's how there's always a difference between the Atma and Paramatma. nor is the individual soul present everywhere. Here we have to understand, we are not present everywhere. We are not omnipresent. God is omnipresent. We are not omnipresent. We are just situated in one place. Generally, in his conditioned state, the individual soul cannot understand his relationship with the supersoul. Sometimes, when he is free from all conditional existence, he can see the real difference between the supersoul and him and himself. When the supersoul tells the conditioned soul, "You and I are one and the same," it is to remind the conditioned soul of his spiritual identity as being qualitatively one. So when the supersoul is telling us, the Paramatma is telling us, the Jivatma, "Oh, you and I are the same," it means same in quality. Like the father will tell the child, "Oh, we are in the same family, we are the same." But there's still a difference, no? Father is the father, child is the child. So, but the quantity is different. In the third canto of Srimad Bhagavatam, 3:28-40, it is said, Yathol Mukhat Vishpulinga Dhumad Vapi Swasambhavat Api Atma Vena Bhimatan Yathagni Prathak Ulmukhat. Fire has different features. There is flame, the sparks, and the smoke. Although these are one in quality, there is still a difference between the fire, the flame, the spark, and the smoke. So the whole thing we call fire, no? Fire is there, the flame is there, the sparks are there, and the smoke is there. The living entity becomes conditioned, but the Supreme Personality of Godhead is different because he does not become conditioned at any point. We are thinking we are the body. Paramatma is not thinking he's the body. He knows his position. Krishna says, I am the witness in everyone's body, overseer and the permitter. He never forgets his position. In the Vedas, it is stated, Atma Tatha Prathak, Drashta Bhagavan, Brahma Samshnita. Atma is the individual soul, as well as the Supreme Personality of Godhead, who is the seer of everything. Although both are spirit, there's always a difference. So Atma, Paramatma, there's always a difference. We cannot do what the Paramatma can do. We can do only what we can do. The spirit soul, we're not speaking about the body. Although both are spirit, okay, in the Smriti, it is also said, Yathagni Shudra Visfulinga Vyucharanti, just as sparks manifest in a large fire. Similarly, the small individual souls are present in the big spiritual flame. There's suppose you see a big fire is there, then you'll see tiny sparks all over. So this is just to give us some kind of an understanding that the super soul is there. And then we are these tiny, tiny individual souls. But we never merge, we never lose our identity. We remain individual souls. It's like, when the green bird is entering a green tree, then we cannot say that the bird has become the tree. No, the bird is sitting inside the tree. Yeah, both are green, yes, but the bird is sitting inside the tree. Similarly, the soul can never become God. God is God, and the spirit soul is spirit soul. In the Bhagavad Gita 9.4, Lord Krishna says, Matsthani sarvabhutani na chaham teshu avastita. All beings are in me, but I am not in them. Although all living beings are resting in him, as small fiery sparks rest on a large flame, both are differently situated. So Krishna says, I'm not, all beings are in me. Everything belongs to Krishna. Everyone belongs to Krishna. Everything is Krishna's energy. But where is Krishna himself? He's in Golok Vrindavan. That's why he's saying, I'm not in them. Krishna himself, he's in Golok Vrindavan. Similarly, in the Vishnu Purana, it is said, Ekadesha Sthitasyagne Jyotsna Vistarini Yatha parasya brahmana shaktis tathedam akhilam jagat. Fire is situated in one place, but it distributes heat and light. Similarly, the Supreme Personality of Godhead is distributing his energies in different ways. The living entity is but one of these energies, marginal energy. So we are one of the energies of Krishna. The energy and the energetic are one in one sense, but they are differently situated as energy and the energetic. So Prabhupada would give the example sun and sunshine. The sunshine is coming from the sun. The sunshine is the energy of the sun. So in one sense, the sunshine is the same as the sun. No? The quality is the same, but the quantity is completely different. We say the sun is inside the house. Actually, it's the sunshine that's in the house. But we say, oh, the sun is there. If the real full sun was in the house, we would be burned immediately. So we can see that the quantity is different. The potency is different. So similarly, the Satchidananda form confirmed in Brahma Samhita, Ishvara Parama Krishna, Satchidananda Vigraha, is different from that of the living entity in both his conditioned and liberated states. So Krishna, he has a form, a spiritual form, Satchidananda. Brahmaji is saying in Brahma Samhita, Ishvara Parama Krishna. Krishna is the original personality of Godhead. And his form, his body is not material, it is spiritual. It is Sat Chit Ananda. So we are also Satchidananda, but we are tiny. We are the energy of Krishna. We are part of Krishna. We are not the complete whole. So only atheists consider the living entity and the personality of Godhead equal in all respects. So if we think that God and living entity is the same, then that's atheism. Equal, if we think that we are equal to God in every way, that is atheism, because that is denying the existence of God. That's denying the greatness of God. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu therefore says, Mayavadi Bhashya Shunile Haya Sarvanash. If one follows the instructions of Mayavadi philosophers and believes that the Supreme Personality of Godhead and the individual soul are one, his understanding of real philosophy is forever doomed. So the real philosophy is that we are not God, but we are part and parcel of God. We have a loving relationship with God. We are God's energy. We are same in quality. God is spirit, we are also spirit, but He is the supreme spirit. We are tiny spirits. We are individual spirit souls. Is that okay?
Yes.
Evam sa manaso hamso
Evam so manaso hamso
hamsena pratibodhita
hamsena pratibodhita
swastastat vyabhicharena
swastastat vyabhicharena
nashtam apapuna smritim.
nashtam apapuna smritim.
In this way, both swans live together in the heart. When one swan is instructed by the other, he is situated in his constitutional position. This means he regains his original Krishna consciousness, which was lost because of his material attraction. Here it is clearly stated, Hamso Hamsena Pratibodhita. The individual soul and the super soul are both compared to swans, Hamsa, because they are white or uncontaminated. One swan, however, is superior and is the instructor of the other. When the inferior swan is separated from the other swan, he is attracted to material enjoyment. This is the cause of his fall down. So here, the Atma and Paramatma are being compared to the swans, like inside the body. There is the soul is there, we ourselves, the soul, and the super soul, Paramatma. So to explain to us, the example is given of swans. Two swans are there. However, they both are not equal. One is in ignorance and the other is instructing. There's a difference between Krishna and Arjuna. Arjuna comes in ignorance. That's why he's asking knowledge from Krishna. So similarly, the soul and the super soul. The soul is getting knowledge from the super soul. So our fall down, what is the cause? It's because we have forgotten we have a relationship with God. The Supreme Personality of Godhead Krishna comes down, avatar, to deliver his devotees and kill the demons. He also gives his sublime instructions in the form of Bhagavad Gita. So Krishna says, Bhagavad Gita, Paritranaya sadhunam vinashaya cha dushkritam dharma samsthapanarthaya sambhavam yuge yuge. He says he comes to protect the devotees. He comes to annihilate the demons and to give the principles of religion. And Krishna has given us the Bhagavad Gita. The individual soul has to understand his position by the grace of the Lord and the spiritual master. Because the text of Bhagavad Gita cannot be understood simply by academic qualification. One has to learn Bhagavad Gita from a realized soul. So it's not that we open the Bhagavad Gita book and we try to study it ourselves. No, we have to hear from the pure devotee. That's the reason Prabhupada translated Bhagavad Gita as it is. He's giving us Bhagavad Gita as it is, spoken by Lord Krishna and understood by Arjuna. Just by scholarship, we won't be able to understand. But the devotee shows us the real knowledge, reveals the knowledge of Bhagavad Gita to us. Tatviti pranipatena pariprashnena sevaya upadekshayanti te jnanam jnaninas tattvadarshina. Krishna is saying this in 434. Bhagavad Gita chapter 4, text 34. Just try to learn the truth by approaching a spiritual master. Inquire from him submissively and render service unto him. The self-realized soul can impart knowledge unto you because he has seen the truths. So Krishna is telling us how we can understand the truth, how we can understand our relationship with Krishna. Approach a bona fide spiritual master, a representative of Krishna, the pure devotee. We need to hear from the pure devotee here in the disciplic succession. Thus, one has to select a bona fide spiritual master and become enlightened to his original consciousness. So we simply have to revive what we have forgotten. In this way, the individual soul can understand that he is always subordinate to the super soul. As soon as he declines to remain subordinate and tries to become an enjoyer, he begins his material conditioning. When he abandons the spirit of being an individual owner or enjoyer, he becomes situated in his liberated state. The word swastha, meaning situated in one's original position, is very significant in this verse. When one gives up his unwanted attitude of superiority, he becomes situated in his original position. What happens is we are trying to imitate God, but we have to give up this imitation business and we have to realize who we are. We have to understand our own reality. It is self-realization. Then we are in our original position. Right now, we are just trying to imitate God and we are envious of God. We want to become God and we are trying to imitate Him. But we have to give this up. We have to become honest, to be situated in our original position. The word tat vyabhicharena is also significant, what it indicates that when one is separated from God due to disobedience, his real sense is lost. Again, by the grace of Krishna and Guru, he can be properly situated in his liberated position. So, the position of every living entity is Krishna consciousness, liberated, because we are all spirit souls. So, that's our original position, Krishna consciousness. Right now, we have forgotten. We are inside the body and we are thinking we are the body. That's why we need to hear from the devotees from Bhagavad Gita, from Bhagavatam, and we have to chant Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare, to revive our original consciousness. These verses are spoken by Srila Narad Muni, and his purpose in speaking them is to revive our consciousness. Although the living entity and the supersoul are one in quality, the individual soul has to pursue the instruction of the supersoul. That is the state of liberation. So when we actually follow Krishna's instructions, that is liberation. We are same in quality. Yes, we are spirit, supersoul is spirit, but the quantity is different, the potency is different. So Narad Muni is trying to revive our original consciousness, trying to make us understand that, hey, you're not God. Stop imitating. You have a relationship with God. In fact, revive that relationship, revive our Krishna consciousness. Varishman etad adhyatmam
Varishman etad adhyatmam
parokshena pradarshitam
parokshena pradarshitam
yat paroksha priyo devo
yat paroksha priyo devo
Bhagavan Vishvabhavana.
Bhagwan Vishvabhavana.
My dear King Prachinabhari, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, the cause of all causes, is celebrated to be known indirectly. Thus, I have described the story of Purañjana to you. Actually, it is an instruction for self-realization. So Narad Muni is not just going to say any story for the heck of it, you know. He is a pure devotee of the Lord. He's always be singing the glories of the Lord. His words are always for our benefit. So similarly, he told the story of Puranjana for all of our benefit, to benefit Prachina Barisha, and it's recorded, so we are hearing, so we are being benefited. We can see, you know, there's so much difference between the conversation, between like what a pure devotee speaks and what we speak. Pure devotee, he's speaking for everyone's benefit. Everyone is getting benefited by this conversation. And what conversations do we hold, you know? So there are many similar stories in the Puranas for self-realization. As stated in the Vedas, Paroksha Priya Eva Hi Deva. There are many stories in the Puranas that are intended to interest ordinary men in transcendental subjects. But actually, these refer to real facts. They are not to be considered stories without a transcendental purpose. Some of them refer to real historical facts. One should be interested, however, in the real purport of the story. So, what is the essence of the story? Indirect instruction is quickly understandable for a common man. Factually, the path of Bhakti Yoga is the path of hearing directly about the pastimes of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Shravanam Kirtanam Vishnu. But those who are not interested in hearing directly about the activities of the Lord or who cannot understand them can very effectively hear such stories and fables as this one narrated by Narad Muni. So bhakti means hearing. Bhakti begins by hearing, no? Hearing and chanting. Hearing from Bhagavatam, Bhagavad Gita. Hearing from the devotees about the glories of Krishna. That is bhakti, devotional service. Chanting his holy name. So one may not be interested. And so then we need to hear like these stories of what Narad Muni is telling us to help us, wake us up, you know, to get us thinking, like, what are we doing? What is my intelligence being used for? What was the purpose I was given this intelligence, and how am I using it? And how we have a relationship with God, but we are completely forgetting that relationship. So it's like kind of like a wake-up call for us. The following is a glossary of some of the important words in this chapter. Adeshakari, the actions resulting from sinful activities. Agastya, the mind. Amatya, the governor of the senses, the mind. Arbuda, various types of Shravan and Kirtan of the Supreme Lord's name, quality, form, and so on. Ari, impediments like disease. Bhoga, enjoyment. Herein, this word refers to real enjoyment in spiritual life. So, enjoyment, the soul always wants to enjoy, but the real way the soul can enjoy is in the spiritual world, in the spiritual atmosphere. When we connect ourselves to Krishna, when we engage in devotional service, that is real enjoyment. Bhritya, the servants of the body, namely the senses. Dravida Raja, devotional service, or a person eligible to act in devotional service. Dwar, the doors of the body, such as the eyes and ears. Griha, home. For spiritual cultivation, one requires an undisturbed place or the good association of devotees, so that one can hear and chant. Then association of devotees, or somewhere there is where one can actually do it peacefully, undisturbedly. Idma Vaha, the devotee who approaches the spiritual master. Idmaha refers to wood that is taken to burn as fuel for a fire. Sorry. A brahmachari is supposed to take this idma to ignite the fire used in performing sacrifices. By spiritual instruction, a brahmachari is trained to ignite a fire and offer oblations in the morning. He's supposed to go to the spiritual master to take lessons on transcendental subject matter. And the Vedic injunction is that when approaching the spiritual master, one must carry with him fuel to perform yajnas or sacrifices. The exact Vedic injunction is as follows: Tad vijnanartham sa gurum eva vikachet samit panishrotriyam brahma nishtam. To learn transcendental subject matter, one must approach the spiritual master. In doing so, he should carry fuel to burn in sacrifice. The symptom of such a spiritual master is that he is expert in understanding the Vedic conclusion, and therefore he constantly engages in the service of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Mundaka Upanishad 1.2.12. So the spiritual master, if we want to understand the spiritual science, we need to approach a spiritual master. And the spiritual master is one who has understood the conclusion of the Vedas. Krishna says, Vedascha sarver aham eva vedya. By all the Vedas, I am to be known. Krishna says in Bhagavad Gita. That is the conclusion of all Vedas, to understand God. So one who has, of course, understood all the Vedas, then he is going to engage in devotional service, because that's what the whole Vedas are telling us. So by serving such a bona fide spiritual master, gradually a conditioned soul becomes detached from material enjoyment and invariably makes progress in spiritual realization under the direction of the spiritual master. So by serving the devotees, one can make progress, spiritual advancement, and get liberated. We heard also the story of Narad Muni. Before, he was a boy of a maidservant, but he did some service for the devotees. He had their remnants, he served them, he had their remnants. And in his next life, he became Narad Muni. So gradually, by serving the bona fide spiritual master, means serving the devotees, the pure devotee. Those who are misled by the illusory energy are never interested in approaching a spiritual master to make life successful. So, Jaya, intelligence. Jirna Sarpa, the fatigued air of life. Kalakanya, the invalidity of old age. Kam, a high fever. Kulachala, the place where there is no disturbance. Kutumbini, intelligence. Madirekshana. Madirekshana refers to one whose eyes are so attractive that one who observes them becomes maddened by her. In other words, Madirekshana means a very beautiful young girl. According to Jiva Goswami, Madirekshana means the personified deity of bhakti. If one is attracted by the bhakti cult, he becomes engaged in the service of the Lord and the spiritual master, and thus his life becomes successful. So Jiva Goswami is saying this Madirekshana, the woman whose eyes are so enchanting, beautiful young girl. So Jiva Goswami is saying this is Bhakti Devi. And if one becomes attracted to Bhakti Devi, then one's life becomes successful. Then we can understand who we truly are. Vaidharvi, the woman, became a follower of her husband. As she left her comfortable home for the service of her husband, a serious student of spiritual understanding must give up everything for the service of the spiritual master. As stated by Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur, Yasya Prasadat Bhagavad Prasada, if one wants actual success in life, he must strictly follow the instructions of the spiritual master. By following such instructions, one is sure to make rapid progress in spiritual life. This statement by Vishwanath Chakravarti is in pursuance of the following injunction from the Shriteshvatara Upanishad 6.23. So Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur, in his Guru Ashtakam, Yasya Prasadan Bhagavad Prasado, by pleasing the spiritual master, one pleases Krishna. By displeasing the spiritual master, one displeases Krishna. So following the instruction of the devotee of the spiritual master. So, and Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur, he's writing this, he's saying this, because it's mentioned in the Shriteshvatara Upanishad. The acharyas don't make up anything. It's not that they think of something and they imagine something. No, they're always following the Vedas and the previous spiritual authority. Yasya deve parabhaktir tatha deve, yatha deve tatha guru, tasyaite kathita hi artha prakashante mahatmana. Yasya deve parabhaktir, yatha deve tatha guru. Only unto those great souls who have implicit faith in both the Lord and the spiritual master are all the imports of Vedic knowledge automatically revealed. So equal faith, implicit faith in God and his pure representative, in God and his pure devotee. When we can have this implicit faith, then we will be able to understand this Vedic knowledge. All the Vedic knowledge will be automatically, we will be able to understand it. It will be revealed to us. In the Chandogya Upanishad, it is said, Acharya, one Purusho Veda, one who approaches a bona fide spiritual master, can understand everything about spiritual realization. Malaya Dwaj, a nice devotee who is like sandalwood. Panchala, the five sense objects. Parichada, the total aggregate of the senses. Paurajana, the seven elements that constitute the body. Pautra, patience and gravity. Prajvar, a kind of fever called Vishnu Jwar. Pratikriya, counteracting agents such as mantras and medicines. Purapalaka, the life air. Putra, consciousness. Sainika, the condition of threefold miseries. Sapta Sutta, the 7 sons, namely hearing, chanting, remembering, offering prayers, serving the lotus feet of the Lord, worshipping the deity, and becoming a servant of the Lord. So the Vedi Bhakti, then the Atmanivedan and Sakhyam comes in Raga Bhakti, because attachment is already there. So, but Vedi Bhakti, we engage in hearing, chanting, remembering, offering prayers, serving the lotus feet of the Lord, worshipping the deity, and becoming a servant of the Lord. Sauridya, endeavor. Sutta, the son of Vedarbi, or in other words, one who is somewhat advanced in fruitive activities and who comes in contact with a devotee spiritual master. Such a person becomes interested in the subject matter of devotional service. Vedarbi, the woman who was formerly a man but took birth as a woman in his next life because of too much attachment to women. Dharma means koshagrams. In fruitive activities or karmakandiya ceremonies, one requires koshagrams. Thus, Vedarbi refers to one who takes birth in a family of karmakandiya understanding. However, if by karmakand activities one by chance comes in contact with a devotee, as Vedarbi did when she married Malayadvaj, his life becomes successful. So why is the karmakand recommended in the Vedas? It's like a stepping stone, a gradual process, because by engaging in karmakand, then one will come in contact with a devotee. And then when one comes in contact with a devotee, one can get opportunity to hear transcendental knowledge, to engage in devotional service, and thus make a success of their life. He then pursues the devotional service of the Lord. The conditioned soul becomes liberated simply by following the instructions of the bona fide spiritual master. So just follow the instructions of the spiritual master and get liberated. Vidarbha Raja Simha, the best of persons who are expert in fruitive activities. Virya, one who has mercy. Yavana, the servant of Yamaraj. Thus end the Bhaktivedanta purpose of the 4th canto, 28th chapter of the Srimad Bhagavatam entitled Purañjana becomes a woman in the next slide. Any comments or questions? Okay. Chapter 29 talks between Narad and King Prachinabharhi. Prachinabharhir Uvacha.
Prachinabharhir uvacha.
Bhagavamste vachosmabhir.
Bhagavamste vachosmabhir.
Na samyag avagamyate.
Na samyag avagamyate.
Kavyastad vijananti.
Kavyastad vijananti.
Na vayam karma mohita.
Na vayam karma mohita.
King Prachinabharhi replied, My dear Lord, we could not appreciate completely the purport of your allegorical story of King Purañjana. Actually, those who are perfect in spiritual knowledge can understand. But for us, who are overly attached to fruitive activities, to realize the purpose of your story is very difficult. So Prachinabharhi is telling Narad Muni, now you told us a story for self-realization, but now you please explain because it was too difficult for me to understand it. In Bhagavad Gita 7.13, Lord Krishna says, Tribhir guna mayir bhaver ebi sarvam idam jagat mohitam na vijanati mam ebhya param avyayam. Deluded by the 3 modes, goodness, passion, and ignorance, the whole world does not know me, who am above the modes and inexhaustible. Deluded by the 3 modes, that's what we are. We are deluded by this goodness, passion, and ignorance. And we have forgotten God, we have forgotten Krishna. Krishna is never under the modes. We heard in the earlier chapter, Paramatma is in our heart. We are also there inside this, in this body. Paramatma is there, we are there, the soul is there. But we, the soul, we are thinking we are the body. So we get, overpowered by the three modes. But the Paramatma, he never thinks he's the body. So he's never under the control of the three modes of nature. He is in fact the controller of the three modes of nature. He's the creator of the three modes of nature. Generally, people are enchanted by the three modes of material nature and therefore practically unable to understand that behind all materialistic activities in the cosmic manifestation is the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Krishna. We are not able to see that Krishna is behind everything. We are just so enamored by the modes, we are so enchanted by this material nature that we are thinking she's independent of Krishna. And we are thinking we are independent of Krishna. Generally, when people are engaged in sinful pious activities, they are not perfect in knowledge of devotional service. The allegorical story narrated by Narad Muni to King Barhishman is especially meant to engage conditioned souls in devotional service. The entire story, narrated allegorically, is easily understood by a person in devotional service. But those who are engaged not in devotional service but in sense gratification cannot perfectly understand it. That is admitted by King Barishman. This 29th chapter describes that by too much attachment for women, one becomes a woman in the next life. But a person who associates with the Supreme Personality of Godhead or his representative becomes free from all material attachments and is thus liberated. So this is what we are going to hear in this chapter. Narada Vachan
Narad Vacha
Purusham Puranjanam Vidya
Purusham Puranjanam Vidyad
Yad Vyanati Atmana Puram
Yat Vyanakti Atmanapuram
Eka Dvitri Chatuspadam
Eka Dvitri Chatuspadam
Bahupadam Apadakam.
Bahupadam Apadakam.
The great sage Narad Muni continued, you must understand that Purañjana, the living entity, transmigrates according to his own work into different types of bodies, which may be one-legged, two-legged, three-legged, four-legged, many-legged, or simply legless. Transmigrating into these various types of bodies, the living entity, as the so-called enjoyer, is known as Purañjana. So Purañjana is we, the soul. Sometimes we are in one-legged body, sometimes no leg body, that's the snakes, no? Sometimes two legs, three, four, many. When we are transmigrating, we're going from one body to another, one body to another. How the spirit soul transmigrates from one type of body to another is nicely described here. The word ekpad, one-legged, refers to ghosts, for it is said that ghosts walk on one leg. The word dvipad, meaning biped, refers to human beings. When he's old and invalid, the human being is supposed to be a triped or three-legged because he walks with the help of a stick or some kind of cane. Of course, the word chatuspad refers to quadrupeds or animals. The word bahupad refers to those creatures who have more than four legs. There are many insects, such as the centipede, and also many aquatic animals that have many legs. The word apadaka, meaning without legs, refers to serpents. The name Puranjana indicates one who enjoys possessing different bodies, types of bodies. His mentality for enjoyment in the material world is accommodated by different types of bodies. So this is us, where our intelligence is just, oh, how I can enjoy this material. It's a little longer. So let's see. Yo vigyata hritastasya
Yo vigyata rastasya
purushasya sakheshvara
purushasya sakeshvara
yanna vigyate pumbir
yanna vigyate pumbir
namabhir vakriya gune.
nama bhiva kriya gune.
The person I've described as unknown is the Supreme Personality of Godhead, the Master and eternal friend of the living entity. Since the living entities cannot realize the Supreme Personality of Godhead by material names, activities, or qualities, he remains everlastingly unknown to the conditioned soul. Because the Supreme Personality of Godhead is unknown to the conditioned soul, he is sometimes described in Vedic literatures as Nirakar, Avigyata, or Avan Manasa Gochara. Actually, it is a fact that the Supreme Personality of Godhead cannot be perceived by material senses as far as his form, name, quality, pastimes, or paraphernalia are concerned. So, because we don't know God, we give different names, or he's Nirakar or Vikyata, because we are not able to see him, no, with our senses, not able to hear him. Our senses are completely material. How will we able to see the spiritual with our material? We need the suitable kind of lens, like a spiritual consciousness, to be able to approach the spiritual. Just like to see the bacteria floating in front of us, we need a suitable lens to see it. However, when one is spiritually advanced, one can understand the name, form, qualities, pastimes, and paraphernalia of the Supreme Lord. This is confirmed in Bhagavad Gita 18:55. Bhaktya mam abhijanati yavan yaschasmi tattvataha. One can understand in truth the Supreme Personality of Godhead only when one is engaged in devotional service. Bhaktya mam abhijanati yavan yaschasmi tattvataha. To understand God in tattva, in truth, one needs to engage in devotional service. Krishna is saying this in Bhagavad Gita, chapter 18, text 55. So, only by bhakti, only by engaging in devotional service can one actually understand God. Ordinary persons engaged in pious and impious activities cannot understand the form, name, and activities of the Lord. The devotee, however, can know the personality of Godhead in many respects. We can understand that Krishna is the Supreme Personality of Godhead, that his address is Golok Vrindavan, and that his activities are all spiritual. So ordinary people cannot understand, but the devotee knows. Devotee knows what is God's name, Krishna, where he lives, Golok Vrindavan. That all his activities, his pastimes, they are eternal, they are spiritual, not material. So devotee knows. Because the Lord's form and activities cannot be understood by materialistic person. He is described by the Shastras as Nirakar, that is, one whose form cannot be ascertained by a materialistic person. So we are not able to understand Krishna's form because our consciousness is how I can enjoy the material world. We're turned away. This does not mean that the Supreme Personality of Godhead has no form. It means that it is not understood by the karmis or fluid actors. So Krishna has a form. Because we can't understand it, we can't say he does not have a form. So his form is described in Brahma Samhita as Sachidananda Vigraha, as confirmed by Padma Puran. Ata Shri Krishna Namadi na Bhavigrayam Indriye Sevonmukhe Jivado Swayam Eva Sprati Ada. No one can understand Krishna as he is by utilizing the blunt material senses. However, the Lord reveals himself to his devotees, being pleased with them because of their transcendental loving service rendered unto him. So, Krishna, he cannot be understood by our material senses. But when He is pleased by our devotional service, then out of His mercy, He reveals Himself to the devotee. And devotional service begins by tongue, by chanting Hare Krishna, by tasting Krishna Prasad, Sevan Mukhehi Jivado. And so we can see by chanting Hare Krishna, by having Krishna Prasad, one will be able to realize God. And we can realize our own self. Since the name, form, qualities, and activities of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Krishna, cannot be understood by the material senses, he is also called adoshaja, meaning beyond sense perception. And the senses are purified by devotional activity. The devotee understands everything about the Lord by the Lord's grace. In this verse, the words Pumbir Nabhe, Namabe, Vakriya Gune are especially significant because God, Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, has many names, activities, and qualities, although none of them are material. So God has many names, His activities are there. It's not like our activity. God's activities are transcendental, they're spiritual. We may say it happened 5,000 years ago, what is my concern? But these are spiritual activities. By hearing about them, we get purified. We can revive our relationship with Krishna. They are not like our activities. So, despite the fact that all these names, activities, and pastimes are mentioned in the Shastras and understood by the devotees, the karmis, fruitive laborers, cannot understand them, nor can the jnanis, mental speculators, understand them. Although there are thousands of names of Lord Vishnu, the karmis and jnanis intermingle the names of the Supreme Godhead with the names of demigods and human beings, because they cannot understand the actual name of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. They take it for granted that any name can be accepted. So we can see that it's only when we can become a devotee will we be able to understand God's position. On the level of karma and gyan, we are mistaking God to be like an ordinary person or even like a great demigod. But God is God. He is not to be compared with anyone else. So they believe that since the absolute truth is impersonal, they can call him by any name. Otherwise, they maintain he has no name. This is not a fact. Here it is clearly stated, Namabir va Kriya Gune. The Lord has specific names such as Rama, Krishna, Govinda, Narayan, Vishnu, and Adokshaja. There are indeed many names, but the conditioned soul cannot understand them. Because we don't understand, we say God has no name. Actually, He has many names. Krishna is the most attractive name, the most, the word Krishna means the most attractive. Most attractive. So the more we hear, the more we chant, the more we will be able to understand God and our relationship with God. The more we will be able to understand ourselves, our true self. Is that okay?
Yes.
Thank you so much for listening and enjoying in. Srila Prabhupada ki jai, Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai.